Welcome everyone. To those of you watching, you can see that this is an Andrew solo episode. If you're listening, it's just me today. And if you haven't listened to our last episode, to the one that aired just before this, it'll be very helpful to go back and take a listen to that if you're curious why I'm here solo in this episode today. And frankly, there will be more solo episodes from me going forward. The podcast, when we launched it, was always Dawn and I kind of reflecting our experience and talking about what it has taken for us to create a Dom-Sub dynamic in the way that we have. And that has been, it's been a beautiful thing. We recorded over 70 episodes like that with her and I there talking, reflecting, going through and sharing some of the moments of our life, sharing some of the really challenging things that we've been through, and really trying to, again, reflect what it is and what it takes to live these power exchange dynamics inside of a marriage. We've been married for 14 years. We've been a couple for 16 years. And we were about 10 years into that relationship before we ever even started Dom-Sub. So when we start after that much time together, after that much history together, and work through so much, again, the goal in bringing power exchange dynamics, dominance and submission into our marriage on my part was never about talking about it. It wasn't about this business at all. It was about trying to make our relationship as good as it could be. And that's been my continual goal and my continual desire, is to make our relationship as good as it can be, to make our dominant submissive dynamic as good as it can be, to see how good I can get as a man, how strong can I get, how solid can I get, how much can I take the lead and take responsibility in my life and in our relationship, and how good can I lead her to be? How good of a life can I give her? Everything that we do is about us, and it's about our relationship, and every decision that I make is about us and our relationship. And the reality is that this business is a secondary thing for us. It's reflecting what we're living. We don't do this for the cameras. We don't do this for social media. We share on camera, we share on social media what it is that we're living. And that's really what came to a head in the month of January for Dawn and I, was that she couldn't be here in the same way that she has been going forward. Again, if you listen back to the last episode, we really gave Dawn basically the open floor to share a lot of her experience and what led up to the point where she needed to step back from doing this podcast with me, at least in the same way. And I'll talk a little bit about later on how Dawn will still be showing up in our business and how she will still make appearances on this podcast. It's just not going to be the same as we've done it in the past. And as real life human beings who put such an emphasis on living the best life that we can, having the best relationship that we can, the truth is that we are always evolving. We're always changing. Dawn is changing and evolving, and she's changed so much. She's changed in every possible way into a more authentic, more spiritually alive human being than any woman I've ever met in my life. A part of that is what led to her needing to take a step back. So the first thing that I want to share for the other women, for the submissives who listen to this, those of you who love Dawn, and I love you for loving her, for those of you who look up to her, for those of you who she has impacted and her experience has helped so many people. I want to share with you what her pullback is and what it isn't. The reason that she's pulling back from this business is not because she can't handle this. It's not that she is unable to deal with what it takes to be a part of this podcast or a part of this business. She can, and she has, and she would continue if I asked her to. That is how our relationship is. That's how our dynamic is. She will follow me if I tell her where to go and what we're doing. I also am always staying open to hearing her, listening to what she has to say, feeling what it is that she's feeling, so I can guide her and us and make the right decisions. So when she came to me and said, hey, I don't think I can do this anymore, what I did was really tune in, tap in, listen, hear, feel, and give her a chance to share what it was that she was experiencing and why she was asking me to basically pull back. And she does let me make those decisions. So as I did this, as I listened to her, as I let her share everything as I do, I think everyone here by now knows that when Dawn has something to say, when she's feeling something, I encourage her to bring all of it. And there were tears, there was anger, there was fear, there was sadness, there was grief, there was every emotion under the sun, along with excitement. Because while at the same time she was recognizing that showing up and doing this podcast, working on courses, doing coaching work, it was something that she enjoyed, she also started to realize that it was taking from her. And again, not in a way that she couldn't handle continuing to do it, but in a way that she was feeling less like herself when she was doing this work. And so she brought that to me. And I listened. And a little bit later in this episode, I'm going to go into how I handle those kind of situations. But for the sake of right now, Dawn's experience in all of this has been one where she's just continued to come more and more alive. And I do wish at times some of you who listen, some of you who watch us on YouTube, who've only gotten to know her really over the last couple of years, I wish you could just see. I really do wish you could just see back to 2015, 2014. Because there's no one here that has any idea how much of a transformation this woman has gone through. And how proud I am of her for that goes beyond words. And she has just come alive. She's come alive as a human being. She's come alive as a spirit. And when we would do these podcasts, we would sit down and record them. When she would do coaching calls, even with the clients that we work with that she loves, she was finding herself really drained and kind of empty. And it would take her a while to come back into feeling that aliveness that she has started to really get used to and value and treasure. There was less of it there for her when we were done with this work. So when this really started to show up and when she started to really notice how much she was needing time to recover after we would record a podcast, she was needing time to recover after working with a client that she loved. She was just feeling kind of off and tired and maybe a little sad. And especially the fact that this even happened during her ovulation phase, during the parts of her cycle when she was the most high energy, she would still end up in kind of this drained energy afterwards. And first and foremost, I am about having us live the best life that we can live. So as she shared this with me, and I listened, and I could really tell and started to feel into what it is that she was experiencing, which, by the way, this was no surprise to me. I'd noticed this, but when she started to notice it for herself and feel it for herself, then it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that we needed to have her pull back. And when I say need, this is what I'm getting at, and this is a really important point in what we're doing and why we're doing it, because I believe in showing the concepts that we talk about, not just telling you. If there's one thing that you take away from this, I hope it is that the way that we handle this and the way that we're changing the way that we approach infinite devotion, the way that we're changing how we approach Dom Sub Devotion as a podcast, we're showing you what it is that we do when we talk about these things. So we want to show you by the way that we live, not just by the words that we use and the concepts that we talk about. We aren't here to teach. We're here to reflect back to you what it is that we're living so that you can learn for yourself what works for you as you try to incorporate these dynamics into your life, into your relationship. So when I look at something like this, I'm not looking at how do I keep everything the same and get her to feel okay with it. I listen to how she's feeling with the understanding that I value authenticity, that I value us living in alignment with the truth. I value our energy. I value her. And when it comes down to it, could she have continued to show up and do these podcasts? Yeah, she could have. But it would not have been us showing you and actually living the concepts that we talk about. Because what I need from her more than anything is her aliveness. And what I believe any dominant man, any masculine man really needs from his woman, from his partner, is for her to be fully alive. And in every other part of our lives, in the places that a lot of you will never see because you don't live with us, you're not in our day-to-day life. The things that we do and the decisions that I make and the way that I lead her is always geared towards giving her the best life possible so that she can feel free, so that she feels alive, so that she's bubbling with energy. I call it sparkling. Right? And every guy knows what it's like to be around your woman when she sparkles. I aim for that feeling, that energy, that experience for her in as many moments of our life as I can possibly give her. And it's not just for her, it's for me too. I get so much out of this. So this isn't just a self-abandonment thing. This is really both selfish on my part and for her own best interest. Now, as you might have heard us said in Now, as you might have heard us say in last week's episode, yeah, it's inconvenient. I've had to change on the fly a lot of what we're doing with our business. But it's worth it. Because what I need more than anything, and what she needs more than anything, is to be fully alive, to be fully authentic, to be fully herself. And if there was any other part of our life where every time she did something, she felt drained, she felt exhausted, she felt tired, she felt like it was taking from her ability to really show up and live her life, we would cut that out of our lives so damn fast you wouldn't even remember it existed. That gets a little more challenging when we live our life openly in the way that we do, and we share it with you in the way that we do. Because we know that you look to us People look to us to learn, to understand, to try to make sense of how to make these things work in your relationship. The reality is we have to have it working the best we can in ours if we want to share an authentic experience with you. And that's what this came down to, is for me to be the man that I say that I am, for me to be the dominant that I claim to be, for me to have integrity to what it is that I share with you. I have to do that at home first. And the point of all of this work, the point of everything that we do, isn't to talk about it to you. It's to live it for ourselves. So I hope that for all of you who do listen to this and value what we share, I do hope that you can see and learn just something from the way that we will continue to always show up in authenticity, to see the truth, to know what's right, and to continue to do that in our relationship. And, to answer questions we've heard from a couple people, no, this podcast isn't going anywhere. We're still going to be here. It's going to look a little different. You're going to get a little bit more of me one-on-one. I'll do more of these solo episodes. I'm also going to start interviewing some people. I might even do a few episodes where I coach people live and share the experience and what I teach to someone else. There's a lot of different things that I can share differently without Dawn here, and I'm excited to do that. Another thing that comes up whenever we make changes to the way that we do our business is, what about integrity? And I think it's important to understand that there is a difference in integrity for a man who's living in a masculine dominant expression and integrity for a woman who's living in a submissive feminine expression. We are not the same in any way, men and women. Masculine energy, feminine energy, they are opposites. And there's probably nowhere that that's more evident than in this word integrity. Because integrity for the masculine, integrity for a man who's living in a masculine dominant expression, is about follow through. It's about doing what we say. It's about living our lives in congruence or in alignment to to our values and to who we are as a human being, as a soul, and following through on that. And men, because of this, we are givers first. We do things, we take action, we lead. This is what being a dominant is. It's about leading, it's about taking responsibility, it's about moving your life forward. And then what we receive is in response to or in feedback for what we give, for what we do. Everything that we do, there's a feedback, there's an answer, there is something that comes back to us. Living in integrity for a man is really all about following through on what you say you're going to do. It's doing and then receiving. It's giving and then receiving. We give first and we receive back from what we give. For a woman, it is the opposite. A feminine expression is receiving first. A woman is a receptive force first. And she gives back from what she receives. All of her actions that she takes, if she's living in a feminine expression, are from the energy that she has inside of her body in response to what she has received. For men, we give of ourselves and we receive back energy in return. This is the fundamental difference between man and woman, between masculine and feminine, on an energetic level. This is the fundamental difference between what it means to be a dominant and what it means to be a submissive. So to live in integrity as a man means to live from your giving first. To be in a dominant expression we have to be giving first, which means we are going to do what we say and then receive back from what it is that we impact. The ways that we show up in the world, we will always be informed, we will be given back to, we will receive something in return for what we give. For a woman, for a submissive who is in a feminine expression, she has to receive first and then give from what she has received. Meaning she cannot always follow through on what she said she was going to do, or she will not be in her most feminine expression. It just can't work that way. She is always in the now. She's always in this present moment, receiving and then giving back, receiving and then giving back. And so for Dawn to continue with this podcast, to continue with our business, because she said she was going to, because she was trying to follow through on what she had promised that she was going to do, or because anyone expected anything of her, wouldn't be in a feminine expression. She wouldn't be in true submission. She would be performing. She would be acting. She'd be faking it. She would be doing something out of obligation. And that's not something that we want any of that energy in our life. That's not how we live our lives. She receives first and gives back from what she receives. So between her and I, as we've continued doing so much of this work, unwinding these old patterns, and we've brought them here and we've talked about her struggles with undoing her old patterns around religion, her undoing her old patterns with her family, undoing old patterns as it came to how she related to her body, as she related to her sexuality. So much of this, she's shown up here and talked with a lot of vulnerability about it. Eventually, it got to a point where all of the talking about it, because she does have to live in the present moment, she does have to give back from what she's receiving. All of the talking about it was continuing to bring into the present moment all of the things that she was working to let go of. Everything that she had put so much effort into moving beyond. All of it was getting stirred back up, getting brought back into the present moment, brought back into her awareness. When the whole point of doing this work isn't to continue to talk about all of the work that you've done. The point of doing all this work is to be able to live on the other side of it, to be free from the patterns that you are attempting to heal. Easy to make that healing into a different identity. It can be so easy to attach to that, especially when our whole life is here on camera, sharing with you all of this work that we're doing, all of this stuff that she's healing and has healed. If an alcoholic quits drinking, gives up alcohol, but then spends their whole entire life working in bars, hanging out in bars, and then talking about how they used to drink and they don't drink anymore. Alcohol is still in complete control of that person's identity, just from a different perspective. And my goal for her is not to be continually controlled by the past. It's for her to live free of the past. That's why I've led her through all of this work, so that she can just go play and live her life and enjoy it. And the talking about it for her was keeping her stuck. That drained energy feeling that she was feeling after we would record podcasts or after she would do coaching calls, it wasn't because she couldn't handle doing that work. It was because all of the things that had defined her in the past were now brought back into the present. They were stirred back up. And they were still controlling her. They were still in control of her experience. Her whole life was being defined by the past. And her sense of obligation to help people. Well, there's that word again, obligation. You heard her say in last week's episode that she realized she's not here to help people. She's here to live her own life. And that's a really tough thing to say, to admit, to realize for her, that she was living so much of her life trying to help other people at the expense of herself. And that's just not what we want for her. It's not what we want for anyone else either. This healing work is so damn important. It's so damn valuable. It makes such a difference, and it has changed both of our lives. But it's not an identity. The whole point of it is to leave it behind. I've also had some people ask me, like, how do I know what to do in these situations? You know, our whole life, our whole business has been built around sharing our experience. And then one day she comes to me and says, you know, I'm not here to help people. I can't do this anymore. I need to focus and put myself first. How do I know what to do with that as a dominant, as a man, as a husband? Because, as I've already said here, it is inconvenient to have her feelings essentially blow up the way that we've been doing our business. How do I know what to do? How do I know what to listen to? How do I know what to follow? How do I know if she's being irrational or over exaggerating? Like, what do I do? So I want to share with you my process around something like this. This is a great example for dominance. If you are in situations where your submissive is having big feelings, how do you handle them? How do you know what the right decisions are to make? The most important thing is to be able to be present. When Dawn brings something like this to me, the moment that I start collapsing into some sort of fear or getting upset or angry because she's changing her mind, you know, whatever might be bothering me about her having this desire or expressing this need to me, as soon as I make it about me, or I stop listening to her, I've completely lost the ability to make sense of what it is that she's experiencing. I need to be able to stay present and really just listen to her, to feel what she's feeling. You've heard me say this before, but she needs to feel you feeling her. And in this moment, when Dawn was having this experience, she needed to feel me feeling her. She needed to know that I was listening. Because she does trust me to make decisions for her and for us based on what I pick up on in her experiences. Again, if I had told her that she's going to keep showing up and doing the podcast, she would have done it. That's the kind of trust we have to have in each other. But as I listened to her, as I was watching her, watching the tears in her eyes, watching the intensity that she was feeling, because there was big intensity. There was a lot of grief around the ways she realized that she was putting other people before herself. There was a lot of sadness for that. There was anger with that. As I tuned into that, I could really tell that what she was feeling and what she was experiencing made it so that she was not able to be as fully alive as she wanted to be, or as she could be. I will always opt to take things out of her life that are draining her, because I know that at her core she is love, she is energy. All women are full of energy. Any guy knows this. The emotion of a woman is full of energy. And that energy is a beautiful thing if we can set it free. So every time that something comes up, I always approach it with the perspective of, is there something that I can do with this that sets her more free? Now, that doesn't mean that she tells me what to do. It doesn't mean that she came to me and said, I'm not doing the podcast anymore. She felt her feelings. She let me into her experience. She vocalized what it is that she was noticing about how she felt. She cried. She put her head on my shoulder. She got really upset several times over a period of a few days. And in all of this, I was just able to see that doing the work that we were doing and having her participate in that work was taking her out of being the most alive, the most energized, the most abundant in spirit that she could be. So how do I know she wasn't just being irrational? I can tell. There's a marked difference between an honest emotion and an irrational reaction. And that is really important, that I'm able to pick up on that difference, and then that she trusts me to tell her when she's being irrational and when she's having a real authentic experience and something needs to be done about it. The amount of trust that's necessary to come to this point is so deep, and it's trust in self and it's trust in each other. That's trust that has to be earned. That is why this process of coming into these deeply devoted dominant submissive dynamics is not a fast one. It is a process that involves patience. It's a process that involves compassion. It's a process that, especially, well, I'm not even going to say just on the dominance part. It's a process that on both people's part takes time. You cannot rush through this. You can't, because you're dealing with patterns that go all the way back to childhood. This realization that Dawn had that led to us taking her out of this podcast was a realization really of a pattern she's been repeating since she was a very, very, very small child, which is helping other people, taking care of other people, ignoring what she needs and looking after them and making sure everyone else has everything they need, giving to other people, helping other people, doing things for others before she does them for herself. That's a pattern that goes back to her childhood. It takes a long time to get to the depth, to be able to unwind and let go of those patterns. So we have to be patient. We absolutely have to be patient. And when we can be patient, and when I can be patient with her, and build the kind of trust that allows her to just feel what she feels and then have me tell her what to do with it, to have me tell her, you're going to keep doing this podcast or you're done, to have me tell her you're going to keep doing what you've done in this business or participating in it or not. To let go of those decisions takes a lot of trust. Now, we work with women all the time who tell us that they are stuck in decision fatigue. They're so overwhelmed, overburdened with all the decisions that they have to make in their lives. They are stuck in so much overthinking and overanalyzing and beating themselves up, and it just stuck in their heads, and so there's so much control in their lives and they're desperate to get out of it. But then when it comes time to give up control, that is a much harder thing to do than it seems like, even though you might know that the control is eating you alive. So what we've been able to do together by building trust, by working really deeply together on having the kind of relationship that we do, we've been able to come to a point where she can just come to me and know that I'm going to let her feel all of her feelings. I'm going to hear what she has to say. I'm going to have absolute compassion for whatever experience she's having, even if she's being irrational, even if she's being a little crazy. Because in that moment, that's what she's feeling. Again, back to the feminine expression. She has received something, and now she's feeling something. Don't miss this. Every woman's emotional reactions are 100% accurate to something. And if you, as the man who wants to be in her life, can look at her and help her figure out what it is that that reaction is accurate to, you're 90% of the way there to having the deepest, most beautiful relationship that you could ever have. And so as she reflected this to me again, I had to make the best decision based on my values and the values of this relationship. This is something I teach individuals and couples. You have to know your values, and then you have to actually live your life in alignment with those values when it gets hard. This was a moment where it got hard. So what were the values? What are our relationship's values? And then that is the guiding principle that I use to make these decisions. And here you are. Our podcast with just me. A couple of other questions people have asked us. First of all, will you ever see Dawn again on the podcast? Yes. She will most certainly be here. Her participation is just going to be very different. She won't be talking about the past. She won't be talking about her processing or what she's been through to get to where she is. Everything that we share from her going forward and everything she shares is going to be reflecting her current experience, what it is that she's living now, what she's experiencing now. So you will absolutely still see her. We'll have her on here in different capacities. I'm sure when we do things like Q&A episodes, she'll be a part of those, especially as a host, asking me questions. You'll also still continue to see and learn from her experience because I'll be reflecting it. I'll be sharing what it is that I'm leading her through, what it is that we are up to as a couple, and really what I'm continuing to learn about myself and about her and about how these relationships work through ours. Again, everything we do is reflecting our experience. So as she pulls back from this work, pulls back from this podcast, and she's having less of those moments where she's being taken into her past and having her past drug into the present. Those moments that were de-energizing her, that were leaving her feeling tired and exhausted. Now she's able to live her life more and more in a more full aliveness, which is already, by the way, absolutely changing how she's experiencing her own life. Because instead of having to go back into and then bring herself back out, and then back into and then bring herself back out, she's already able, because of the changes we've made, to live even more in her fullest expression. And it's bringing her alive in entirely new ways. You're also going to see more of Dawn in different ways going forward, because as she comes into this aliveness, as she continues to tap into what she's really put here on earth to do, what her purpose is, what her deepest soul's purpose is, we'll be sharing that as it comes through her. So you will most certainly see Dawn. For all of you who love her, care about her, she's not going anywhere. She's just going to be showing up differently. So to wrap this up a little bit, I want to just extract a couple of lessons from this experience and from how we have, what we've gone through in this, and then what it is that has changed in our lives as a result of it. For the men, for the dominants, for those who are responsible for leading a submissive and a power exchange dynamic. You have to do your own work, and you have to put yourself first in order to do that work. The reason that we do our own work, the reason that we have to work on our embodiment, on our presence, on our inner strength, our inner dominance, is because when she is in these big emotional experiences, she needs us to be able to hold her. Again, if I had collapsed and gone into making Dawn's experience about myself, about how she wasn't going to be helping me as much anymore, or she said she was going to be a part of this podcast and now she's pulling away from it, any of that, I make myself a victim. Now she isn't being seen, she isn't being heard, she isn't being felt, she isn't able to trust me at all. And she needs to be able to trust me the most. So we have to do the work to stay calm, to take responsibility. We have to take care of ourselves. This means sometimes putting ourselves before her. It means telling her that she can't have our time, she can't have our attention. She needs us to be at our best in order to be able to hold all of this energy that she's going to bring to us. Also, it's extraordinarily important for the men, for the dominants, to know that your values are what will guide you. You have to sort those values out when you're not in these big moments. You have to know what your relationship stands for, what you stand for, and figure that out when things are calm, when things are at more of a baseline, so that when there's more activated emotions, when there's big decisions to be made, you have a guidepost, you have something to turn to, something to look at. This is what we talk about in our course, Structuring Your DS Dynamic. We lead you through a process of teaching you how to build your own set of values as a part of your contract, and how you talk through that, how you do that in alignment with the power exchange dynamics. So you have to know your values. You have to have those sorted out ahead of time. And then you need to make decisions, even when they're inconvenient, even when they're challenging, even when they're hard, especially when they're hard, that bring you closer to what your vision is for the relationship. Why are you doing dominance and submission in the first place? What's the point? The point isn't just to boss her around. If that's the only reason that you're doing dominance and submission, just stop. For us, the point of doing this is to live the most free and abundant life that we can live. I want to help set her free while I'm also setting myself free from all of the limitations, from all of my past, from everything that might hold me back from being the fullest, most abundant human being that I can be, that she can be, and that we can be together. That's the point for us. You might have a different point. There might be a different purpose. You have to know what that is, and you have to have it sorted out in those times when it's calm, so that when a big decision needs to be made, you can look at your values, you can look at your vision, you can know what the hell it is that you're doing this for, and then make that decision to help bring you closer to that. For the women, for the submissives, what I hope you can learn from Dawn in this experience is that you need to continue to speak up. You have to speak up when it's challenging, especially when it's challenging, and let your man into the experience that you're having. If the guy that you're with has a hard time with you sharing how you feel, don't shape how you feel because he has a hard time. You have to let him have his own experience. Give him the dignity of having that experience for himself. If he is upset by it, let him be upset. Don't abandon yourself. Speak up for yourself. Listen to yourself. You will always be choosing between living out of obligation and performance or living out of authenticity and aliveness. And my hope for you is that you can continue to show up and live out of authenticity and aliveness. But that requires using your voice. And I get it. It's scary. It's terrifying. It's the scariest thing in the world to be yourself. Don Miguel Ruiz talks about this in the book, The Four Agreements. Human beings, our greatest fear is not death, it's being alive. Because to be alive, we have to speak up and say everything that we're embarrassed by, everything we're ashamed of, everything we're afraid of being judged for, all of the ways that we fear the loss of love. We have to stand right in the face of them. And everything that you desire in your relationship comes on the other side of authentic expression. So don't ever protect a man from how you feel in response to how he's showing up. Don't ever abandon yourself and what you need. Speak up, share how you feel, share what you need. Don't back down. There's something real in that. There's something that needs to be said when you have a big emotion, when you have a big feeling. You need to let yourself feel it, and you need to speak up. The reason that I'm doing this podcast, this episode right now solo, is because we live the concepts that we teach. It's because Dawn speaks up and shares how she feels. And it's because she's able to listen to and follow me when I guide her with what to do out of that experience. When she has that feeling, when she has that emotion, and she shares it with me. And I look into it, I feel into it. I know what it is that I want for us and for her. And then I make the best decision that I can. And I always take responsibility for that decision. If it doesn't go well, I'm responsible for that too. But we will always show up in the fullest authenticity that we can, to be as real as we can with you. Even in this particular case, when it means Dawn is going to show up less. The reality is that we will always show you, not just tell you. And if you ever see us doing differently, please, by all means, hold us accountable to that. Because our highest value is the truth. And we live our lives in authenticity to the truth. And we both submit to the truth. And the truth is that in order for her to be as fully free as she can, she needs to go out there and live and play. And enjoy her life. And I look forward to sharing more and more with you of how she is out there living, how she's out there playing. I'm as proud of her as I could possibly be. I'm as proud to have her as my submissive as I could possibly be. I'm as proud to have her as my wife as I could possibly be. And I will continue to be her biggest cheerleader. And I look forward to sharing with you everything that this makes possible, because this is not anything but a celebration for us. It's an absolute celebration because she is living now more and more fully in the truth of who she was born to be. And I know that that is going to bring some fantastic, fun, and probably surprising things going forward. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Look forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. Please, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. If you're watching on YouTube, we would love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Spotify, leave us comments. We'd love to hear from you, hear what you have to say. And as always, you can follow us on Instagram at _infinite devotion, and take a look in the show notes for all of the different ways that we help support individuals and couples to make these power exchange dynamics work inside of these loving long-term relationships. Thanks for tuning in.